gang war because somebody come try to take over my dirt, place I live. And because I don't want nobody bothering me, I guess that's why. I use gang war to protect my territory right here, to protect this area, the turf. That's why I gang war.
The Almighty Black Peace Stone Nation, often abbreviated as the BPSN. It was founded in Chicago, South Side, in 1959. It was a spin-off gang of the Blackstone Rangers. The organizer and co-founder, Eugene Hairston, and Jeff Fort, both were highly intelligent and feared in their own right. They met at a community organization center for black youth in the Woodlawn section on the South Side. From 1961 to 1963, they evolved into one of the most dangerous and powerful gangs in Chicago. Jeff Fort was the second of 10 children, and he was born in Alberton, Mississippi. He moved with his family to Woodlawn section in 1955 and dropped out of Hyde Park High School after the 9th grade. During the early 1960s, he earned the nickname Angel for his ability to solve disputes and form alliances between the Rangers and other gangs. Fort was sharp and was a born leader. He assembled a coalition of 21 gangs with about 5,000 members. He organized the coalition under a governing body called the Main 21, composed of 21 gang leaders or generals. As the Ranger organization grew, it became involved in community politician activism. It also received support from Minister John Fry, who advised Hairston and Fort how to manage their money and organization. In 1967, under Fry's guidance, Fort obtained a charter from the state of Illinois to form a politician organization, Grassroots Independent Voters of Illinois. Fort's organization applied and received a $1 million federal grant. The grant's purpose was to fund a program to teach job skills to gang members. The Rangers also received grants and loans from private foundations. Unlike other gangs, the Blackstone Rangers were not considered outsiders, but had been largely accepted by Chicago society, with Jeff Fort at the head, even receiving an invitation from President Nixon in 1968, but Fort declined and sent his man, Mickey Cobwell, to go instead.
Black gangs that hate Latinos. Latino gangs that hate African Americans. In the last 4 years, an 11% spike in gang violence that crosses racial lines.
Gang injection over here for the gang is so serious. A lot of people was in the movie, they went to jail.
Blackstone mean different things, you feel me? You could be from Blackstone, you could be a lawyer, football player, whatever.
This is really the jungle, it's like for real.
These are projects, bro.
Although the BPSN originated in Chicago, it also advanced in Indiana communities, as well as Crown Point and Elkhart. It has since emerged in other areas, particularly Weedy Place, South Dallas, Texas, and Meadow Heights in Northwest Victoria. They also have a stronghold in a Los Angeles area called the Jungle, and another area called Crenshaw and Adams. They were founded by O.G.T. Rogers from Chicago after he moved to Los Angeles when he was just 13. They also affiliated with the Bloods due to the Bloods and the Piru Bloods protecting the BPSN in Los Angeles from the Crips when they began in Los Angeles. What started out as a street gang turned to a nationwide organization. Under Fort's command, it became associated with the Black Nationalism Group, eventually attracting the attention of the Nation of Islam leader, Louis Farrakhan, who introduced them to the Libyan leader, Muhammad al-Gaddafi, and the Nicaragua Satanism Group. In 1986, 4 of his members were indicted for conspiracy to commit terrorist acts on the United States for the Liberian government. The verdict marked the first time in American history that an American citizen had been found guilty of planning terrorist attacks for a foreign government in return for money. Sometimes too much power can lead to destruction. He ended up moving to Milwaukee and joined the Science Temple and renamed the Black Peace Stones the El Rukn tribe. El Rukn being Arabic for pillar. In 1978, Fort returned to Chicago and he replaced the Stones' 21 generals with 5 close associates and renamed them the Black Peace Stone Nation to El Rukn. In early 1970, Fort purchased the Oakwood, an old vacant movie theater located at 3947 South Drexel Ave. It was now his headquarters and main base of operation. He named it the Fort. During the 1970s, the gang had trafficked cocaine and heroin. It was a main source throughout the city of Chicago. In 1983, Fort got convicted of drug trafficking and was sentenced to 13 years. Now, this part of the case is tricky, and it might be a conspiracy, because Fort was locked up, and his men were meeting with members of Gaddafi's unit and were allegedly planning terrorist attacks. So that's an easy way to jam somebody up. Money, most of the time. The 2.5 was on the table. Fort was locked up. So his men probably were thinking, hey, let's do it for the boss. The Liberian leader, Gaddafi, was never charged. Fort ended up going to trial, and he got sentenced to 80 years. He was convicted of conspiring to commit domestic terrorism acts for a foreign government. He also got convicted of ordering the 1981 murder of a rival gangman. He got sentenced to 75 years on that case to be served consecutive. He was sent to ADX Florence Supermax in Colorado. He's been there since 2006, and it's 2024, and he's still there.
Target 1, the Fort, the El Rukn headquarters for a dozen years at 39th and Drexel. The ATF, along with other federal, city, and state law enforcement agents, hammered and cut and sawed their way into the fortified old building, which was once the Oakland Theater. The second target today, an apartment building at 6416 South Kenwood, believed to be one of the El Rukn's numerous property holdings. Arrested were 35-year-old Alan Knox, otherwise known as Gangster, a reputed El Rukn general, and Trammell Davis, an alleged general often used as a look-alike for imprisoned El Rukn leader Jeff Fort. Knox was charged with attempting to receive an M72 law rocket. This is what a law rocket looks like. It is a military, handheld rocket used to fire at tanks. U.S. Attorney Anton Valukas would only give sketchy details about the arrest and the rocket at an afternoon news conference.
Knox was arrested in connection with his attempt to receive an interstate shipment, an M72 light anti-tank weapon for purposes of destroying a building. Davis was arrested in connection with a search being conducted at the 6416 South Kenwood address in connection with the same investigation. At the time that these arrests and search were being made, let me make this one statement parenthetically, weapons were recovered in those searches so far.
In addition to weapons, which appear to be the main priority today, drug paraphernalia, scales, and records of alleged transactions all were part of the search of El Rukn property. Authorities are remaining closed-mouthed about their third arrest and thus far have not released that person's identity. Their biggest concern, why would a Chicago street gang be in the market for a light anti-tank missile? Tonight at 6, I'll have an exclusive report on what federal authorities theorize the El Rukns are up to. Ron and Mary, it may surprise you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Carol. Good evening. Has the El Rukn street gang forged a link to international terrorist organizations? Incredible as that may sound to some, today's raid of 2 alleged El Rukn headquarters raises new concerns for law enforcement. We have exclusive details. That's because in the process of raiding and ripping apart storage areas at the El Rukn so-called fort here at 39th and Drexel, and at one of their alleged apartment buildings here at 64th and Kenwood, agents of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, gang crimes officers, and other local, state, and federal authorities not only turned up what appeared to be an anti-tank rocket and launcher similar in construction to this Law missile, but authorities, according to highly placed sources, now have information that the Al-Rukns have been making contacts with radical Muslim groups in the Middle East. Authorities are looking into allegations that those contacts include Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. But U.S. Attorney Anton Valoukas would have no comment when asked about such reports, and at a press conference today would only read a prepared statement about two alleged Al-Rukns who were arrested today, reported Generals Alan Knox and Trammell Davis.
Knox was arrested in connection with his attempt to receive an interstate shipment, an M72 light anti-tank weapon for purposes of destroying a building. Davis was arrested in connection with a search being conducted at the 6416 South Kenwood address in connection with the same investigation.
In recent months, the Al-Rukns have changed the name on the masthead of their headquarters to include Sunni Muslim, arguing they always were and always will be a religious organization, not a gang. The Malik that appears under the name Muslim refers to Jeff Fort, the leader of the gang who authorities say is still running this organization from a Texas federal prison.
Libya's Muammar Gaddafi is a Sunni Muslim. According to highly placed sources, the Al-Rukns have attempted to sell their services to Gaddafi in exchange for financial support. Authorities add that information to other information they've acquired over the years, including the fact that when Jeff Fort several years ago attempted to flee federal custody, federal authorities found he had made plans to try and escape to Pakistan. And exiled Al-Rukn General Derek Porter a couple of years ago was tracked by federal agents traveling in the Middle East. And law enforcement confirms a relationship between the Al-Rukns and the Black Hebrews, a group based in Israel now in serious criminal difficulties with U.S. authorities. Today's charge of attempting to receive an anti-tank missile, coupled with new information being supplied to authorities here in Chicago, are now causing the ATF and others to give some serious consideration to whether the Al-Rukns are branching out into some aspect of international weapons and terrorist business for financial gain. And there is much more to report on the Al-Rukns. Tonight at 10, I'll have an exclusive report on what may be happening to imprisoned Al-Rukn leader Jeff Fort in the very near future.
As the Al-Rukn street gang of Chicago tried to link up with international terrorists. Well, unbelievable as that may sound, as Carol reported exclusively at 6 tonight, federal authorities are investigating just that possibility. And tonight, Carol tells us that's not all they're investigating.
No, Ron, it's not. Authorities are also making a careful study of Jeff Fort, the leader of the Al-Rukns. They say just because he's been sent away to a Texas federal prison doesn't mean he's out of circulation. Fort's headquarters and an Al-Rukn apartment building were both raided on the south side today by a variety of law enforcement officials, ATF, the Marshal's Office, gang crimes officers, the FBI. Drug paraphernalia was confiscated from the first location. More surprisingly, a major piece of military hardware, an anti-tank missile and launcher like the one you see here, was taken from the second location. Authorities believe that even though Jeff Fort left Chicago several years ago to do time in a federal Texas prison, that the current activities of this street gang are being directed by Fort himself. Channel 5 News has learned that investigators are preparing to slap Jeff Fort with new federal racketeering charges. According to highly reliable sources, those charges are based on long-distance phone taps, conversations between Jeff Fort and gang members back here at home, conversations in which Fort allegedly is running the gang's criminal activity here in Chicago.
We're not a gang.
But for years now, the Al-Rukns have steadfastly denied that they are a criminal activity, saying they are simply a Muslim religion.
We only are involved with the uplifting and the building of our people in our society, building better neighborhoods and better communities.
But sources say evidence currently exists that shows a number of things, including that Fort and his organization have recently tried to move beyond the streets of Chicago, have made overtures to the government of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, allegedly offering to commit terrorist acts inside the United States in exchange for large sums of money.
I will have no comment on any other aspect of this today. I will tomorrow.
Though the U.S. Attorney's Office won't comment on any of this, those same highly placed sources say the Al-Rukns' interest in acquiring anti-tank military hardware fuels their concern. As a result of today's raids and federal warrants, 2 reputed Al-Rukn generals were arrested. A third is still being sought, Ron.